King Charles is reported to have made the decision to axe the Duke of York's private security team that protects his Windsor home, putting pressure on Prince Andrew to leave Royal Lodge.
Well, as a member of the royal family, should Andrew's private security costs continue to be covered? Or is the King's refusal to no longer foot the bill actually a rather smart and sensible move? Well, former royal editor at The Sun, Duncan Larkham, thinks it's a step too far. But social commentator Marlayton says it's time for the gravy train to stop. Oh, you're harsh. Why should it stop?
That is not even harsh. I don't think so. You know what? I'll be completely honest. I genuinely feel like this whole dynamic with Prince Andrew and moving out of Royal Lodge kind of reminds me of, like, when you invite one of those annoying, like, family members round for the weekend and you quickly realise that they just won't leave, and it's because you keep feeding them and giving them water and then paying, like, millions of pounds for their security. So I think at this point you kind of need to get rid of the incentives. I think this is all about him leaving Royal Lodge, and this is, I personally believe, a nice way of doing that.
For people that don't know, Royal Lodge is slightly outside the grounds of Windsor Castle, isn't it? Yeah. So there's Royal Lodge, lovely building, lovely home, but there is security, obviously, surrounding Windsor, and if he moved into Frogmore Cottage, then he could be protected.
Quite a bit smaller.
A little bit smaller.
That's Frogmore.
Still a place that we'd all love to live there.
Thank you.
Let's
massive
be honest.
House, but
you know,
smaller.
gorgeous. So come in. And he would be protected. And you say that's what should happen rather than having his own private residence.
Precisely.
You know, he's still the brother, though, of the king, isn't he?
Yeah, royal brothers falling out. There's a whiff of familiarity about it, isn't there? Yes, I mean, look, he's the brother of the king. I think my point would be, in terms of stripping him of his private security, it's really one of those situations where he was born a prince. Now, whatever Andrew may or may not have done, and he may not be a very popular member of the royal family, in fact, he's the least popular according to the polls, but he's still born a prince, and therefore he's still at risk. And I think, you know, if former prime ministers have royal protection, or diplomatic protection all the way through. I think with Prince Andrew, whilst this might look like a good PR move for Charles, it could be one that he comes to regret.
There's recent precedent, of course, we're talking about brothers, the brother of the future king. So Harry and Meghan don't have protection here. Why should Andrew get protection?
Precisely.
Well, the protection that Andrew has is paid privately by King Charles, so it's not out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Let me rephrase that. Why should he get protection for that massive house when he could have a really big house in Frogmore?
Well, I personally think it's ridiculous he's still living in Royal Lodge, I'm afraid. I mean, that's something we agree on.
Yeah.
And if this is just a move, which I suspect it may be, just a move by King Charles to kind of nudge Andrew out and make the right decision.
Because apparently he doesn't want to leave. This is why he reminds me of the annoying family member that just won't leave you alone, because he won't leave.
So effectively you're in agreement that this is a good move. He's got a 31-bedroom house. He doesn't need to be in it. And this is going to nudge him.
Where I would disagree, sorry, Kate. Yeah, where I would disagree is I think it is a step too far to leave a member of the royal family
exposed. Is there a history
exposed.
of attacks on members of the royal family?
1976, Princess Anne, there was a very real kidnap attempt. And in fact, if she hadn't had protection then, who knows what might have happened. So there have been... Think of the intruder into the Queen's bedroom in the 1980s. You know, the royals, whether they like it or not, they're born into something which puts them at risk, puts them in danger.
But none of these things, Duncan, with all due respect, none of these things I personally feel were taken into consideration when it pertains to Harry and Meghan. And this is where I believe there's hypocrisy. And so I just think in terms of a PR move, I think he would do well to make sure that he is consistent. If he decides he's going to punish individuals within the family due to bringing the institution into disrepute, then he should be consistent in that behaviour. And so if he's going to punish Harry and not necessarily help him with his security, I do not see why on earth he would help Prince Andrew.
Well,
I just think it's ridiculous.
maybe 2 points might be that Harry and Meghan chose to leave the country, leave the royal family. They have an opportunity to earn money, and they've done that to pay for their own private security, albeit some argue it's sort of still on the back of being a member of the royal family in some way. Whereas perhaps Andrew doesn't have that. He's been stripped of his royal duties. He isn't in that position. Is that an argument?
I think it's a completely valid argument, and I think to tail end on that, I would actually argue that he becomes an enabler if he kind of leans into that sentiment, in all honesty. I genuinely believe, I've said it, this, as far as I'm aware, he's not budging. And so if you decide, as King Charles, to continue to pay for him, I think it's millions he's given a year, millions in regards to security, and then has the Royal Lodge, there is no incentive for this individual to lean on himself, his agency, stand on his own 2 feet, and kind of distance himself. And I just want to add, if we really think about this institution, when you think about Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth, and I think about reputation management, that's why it's so important. King Charles has to be consistent. We are, as a nation, so much more conscious about hypocrisy nowadays and these types of things. So I just think he should be consistent.
OK, we get all that.
He's
but how
separated himself
so how
publicly,
would he
so he should do it.
How would he pay for his own security if he can't work?
Well, surely that's his...
I know, but
that's for him to
it's
solve,
a predicament.
No? But just like Harry and Meghan solved it, I think Andrew can do the same. No?
So Andrew could do an Oprah interview and cash in.
I mean,
I don't think he's really that keen on doing interviews, funnily enough, anymore.
That's his prerogative. I genuinely believe it's for him to solve, and that's the point. I think it's a valid question. How does one survive? But he is a grown man. He shouldn't be leaning on his brother at this point, after the scandal. Let's be honest with that.
As a royal, there's very limited things that Prince Andrew can do, even if he wanted to.
So you're trying to say he's skint, basically? He's got no money? Has he not got money?
How would he earn money? How would he earn money?
But does he, I'm asking you if he has money.
He's not doing public duties, and, well, he can't earn it. He's not quite a good enough golfer. But
all right.
I mean, that sort of, I mean, it's funny, but it sort of sums it up. What use is he? He doesn't work. He wouldn't. Yeah. And he is in a 31-bedroom property.
Yes.
And he is. And we are in a cost of living crisis. I mean, looking at people messaging in on X, Peter says the Duke of York doesn't need around-the-clock security, and the King is right to withdraw it. Yeah. These police officers could be better deployed elsewhere, and that's a good point. Candice on X says time to cut the cord, and that goes with the point we heard earlier that he's not going to select to do this. He's not going to opt to do this. You need to cut the cord.
He is very unpopular, of course he is, and I'm not surprised people are messaging in saying that it's time to stop his security or who cares about Prince Andrew now. But he is a member of the royal family. He has no choice about that. He can't just go off and do something else. And he is at risk. I mean, he'd be living in fear, whether it be in a 30-room house or a smaller scaled-down place. He'd be living in fear of intruders the whole time.
It would be horrible for the King, wouldn't it, if he withdrew this and something happened?
Well, there we are. I mean, that would be the ultimate PR disaster for the King.
And so the only other choice is to just die spending money on your brother until you both die. Like, that's literally, if you just think about it pragmatically, I genuinely believe that this man Prince Andrew has no incentive to leave. And so you're right, you're perfect, you're right. If something happens, it's really bad. And so therefore, what does King Charles do? Just pay for him for the rest of his life? And then, is that what we're saying? That you get to go through a scandal, you do nothing, you live in a big house, you get millions of pounds paid for you, and you get millions of pounds paid for your security. You don't work. I mean, at this point, you're just a straight enabler.
Let's remember he's maintained his innocence. So.
With all due respect, he has.
Don't forget as well, let's remember that, I mean, my mother died the same month as the Queen, and I'm one of 6 children, and we all inherited a share of that, an equal share. The King, as the King, became King and then inherits the whole Crown estate, inherits the whole wealth, and his siblings are therefore his responsibility in many ways because the estate isn't given out equally like a normal family.
The Queen wouldn't want to see perhaps Prince Andrew at risk, would she, despite the fact that she may not have been very pleased with him at the time of passing? Well, look, we asked you what you thought. Is it time the King stops paying for his non-working royal brother's private security? A whopping 92% of you said yes, he should. Only 8% of you said no. So if Prince Andrew is watching this morning from wherever he currently is, then he is, he's not going to take comfort in that, is he?
And those polls are quite interesting because sometimes you get people on who can sway the poll. But I think... Duncan, I'm genuinely saying...
It's a good battle.
No, but I just don't think... I think it's an impossible thing to argue. I think it is because people are really angry with Andrew, and I think they probably will be for the rest of his life. So whatever you did, you could have played a blinder, but you probably wouldn't have turned that poll round. You did.
Sean, I think it's time to stop digging. Duncan, thank you very much indeed. And good to speak to you too. Thank you.